Okay. So hi, Sarah. Hi, Ian. Thank you so much for coming to our class. I was hoping perhaps you guys could introduce yourselves to everybody here.
All right. Well, hello. You guys know our names. I'm Ian, and this is Sarah. Obviously, not the other way around. Basically, Jeff invited us. I guess it's Miss Aboud in this context. We are.
Yes, fine. Yeah.
uh, Sarah and Genevieve are friends from way back in university, and yeah, back to high school. Anyway, so you invited us to come and speak about our experience because we did kind of a virage. We did kind of a 360 in our lives and decided to start an organic farm. It was not something that we had planned on doing early in our lives. We were, in university. You don't necessarily need you certainly don't need a university degree in journalism and geography to become a farmer. You can get you can get degrees in something much more useful to farming. There are lots of farming degrees out there. And we sort of had to just sort of figure it out on our own when we got started in this, but it was the right decision for us, I think. Anything to add?
Okay, so Ian and Sarah, just to ask you a little bit about the reasons you made that decision. Why did you decide? I'm glad it's the right decision for you guys. Why did you make that choice?
Uh,
Sort of,
Sorry, there's something dripping water.
Yeah, we're getting
both of us.
We're in a ceiling greenhouse this morning, and there's a bit of condensation because it was so cold outside. And we'll show you the reason why it's humid in a moment.
But well, basically, full disclosure. So I work off the farm. So I work as a community journalist and as a tourism development agent for the local MRC. So I'm sort of partial financial backing for the farming plan. And whenever I get a chance, I go out and I work in the fields and things like that. But we also have 2 kids, so they are distracting anyway from farming, but a really fun adventure on their own. And yeah, Ian was working in sustainability, and when we moved from Montreal to the country. We live in Elgin, Quebec now, but we originally moved to sort of Huntingdon. And yeah, Ian came up to me one day. He had been let go from a job and out here that he really didn't like very much. And yeah, he just said, I would like to be a farmer. And I did not laugh. Ian is born and raised in Toronto. And beyond growing an awful lot of tomato plants and having a baby pool in which he insisted on growing carrots in our living room in our apartment in Montreal, we didn't really have any farming experience. I grew up in a rural region, but don't have a huge amount, certainly not vegetables. I grew up, my mom was on a dairy farm. And yeah, so I basically said to him that, yep, we could become farmers, but he had to prove that it was something that could be viable first. And so that sort of sent Ian off on about a year-long exploratory project, I guess, to try to find funding and to try to make sure that we could make this work.
And models that we could emulate. I mean, I don't know if I actually ever said to Sarah that I wanted to become a farmer. I think maybe more along the line of, oh geez, if there was a way to actually, make a revenue at farming, that would be nice, because what do people need from a business standpoint? If I'm going to start a business, what do people always need? Well, food. That's something that I always enjoyed. So she came up to me one day with a article from the Montreal Gazette that talked about this guy who was making $150,000 a year on 1.5 acres and another farm that is out here, which ironically we are now kind of taking over as farmers because they retired and they're renting us their land, but the Ferme La Terre Bleue in Elgin, which was also basically was contrasting these 2 successful models of farms. And I said, geez, that sounds kind of interesting. That's not a lot of land. 1.5 acres is tiny, tiny, tiny. It's like 50,000 square feet, which is 100 feet by 50 by 500 feet, to give you an idea. That's a decent revenue. It seems like that's a fair bit of money. So yeah, I went and started reading and figuring out if we could actually do it, and figured out if we were up to it. If our land was going to work for it, for one thing, because it's not any piece of land that you can actually turn into a farm. There's a lot of really bad land out there. And yeah, so that's where kind of that exploratory phase came in, just to see, like, are we actually able to do this? Are we actually able to sell, to grow and sell food?
So I'm just going to
And
interject for a second
yes,
and ask you another question. So you
sure.
guys are a small scale farm. You're mentioning the size of those acreages. Like those are tiny, right? Like you have lots in the city that are this size sometimes. I mean, it's a big lot in the city, but it's but
Yeah.
how big? How much? Land do you guys farm yourselves?
We have 1.5 acres here at our farm, and then we have 5 acres at the farm that we rent,
Okay.
which is 5 minutes away. So that farm that Sarah brought to me in the article in the Gazette is 5 minutes away, and we ended up getting on with the owners who had 10 acres, and they're not farming as much, and it just was serendipity that they took us under their wing and sort of showed us how to do it too. So it was a nice accueil, getting into the farming community here. People have been really helpful. That was really key. But in terms of the land that we have, I'm gonna share.
Are we able to show pictures?
Yeah, do you want to make us co-host? Because I got a couple photos
Well,
that
what
I.
I'll do is I'm going to allow screen sharing, so you guys can share anything that you'd like.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then perhaps also you can explain like where you are to everybody. So
Yes.
you guys go ahead at choose
All
whatever
right.
you'd like to do first.
So I'm gonna go from, I think it's a 5. This is okay. So this is our farm, and I'm gonna start the. It is F5. That was right. Okay. So on the left here is our farm. So our house is right about here, and so that gives you an idea of the scale of our farm. And this is a greenhouse that we have in here. It's kind of an old photo, so we've got 4 of these now. But you can see we're surrounded by more conventional kind of fields. So this is corn, soy, hay, that kind of thing. And forest. So, but we've got this forest that separates us from all of that. So as far as organic certification is concerned, we need a separation distance to ensure that there's no pesticides that get into our field, and we have plenty of that. This here is the farm that we rent. Miles, stop watering. I'm sorry. Our daughter is watering everything right now. She tends to overwater a little bit. She likes to water the babies, which are the seedlings that we have in here. So on these 2 surfaces, we feed approximately 150 families. We have almost 100 CSA baskets, community supported agriculture, which is like people sign up ahead of time, and they get a basket of fresh vegetables every single week from June till November. So I don't know if that answers your scale question, but it's
Absolutely, thank you. And I think that these pictures are really really good for that.
And then as far as like sort of to go into a little bit more detail on how we got started, we bought the photo on the left, and actually that's already been mowed rather extensively. It was 4-foot tall weeds, and on right here is a boat that came with the field, and that was in the way for the first like 4 years that we couldn't we could use the land there. It was just this dead boat. But obviously we couldn't farm that. We had to really figure out how to work that. And this was quite wet too, so we had a lot of problems with drainage and stuff. We really didn't know what we were getting into. And if we had been some farmers look for land and then they build a house that'll go on that land, because the land is the most important thing. We bought the house and said we'll make the land work, but it was really wet and really heavy and really hard to work. So we had to work a lot harder than some people do just to get things going. And then on the right hand side here is what we have now. So totally transformed landscape with the greenhouses and everything like that. And this was in the first year when we were getting things started. So we built one greenhouse, and you can see that famous boat that's still there in the way, and a backhoe here taking down some small trees here so that we could get in and actually work that stuff. And this was just before we our first real year after our exploratory year. This was our first real year of farming where we were planning on getting a revenue out of it, and we actually needed that revenue to get by. And this is what we had in April. So almost exactly this time of year, we had inches of water in our field, and we ended up figuring out that we had to get the water out, and so we put a submersible pump, kind of pump that
looks like a sump pump to me. It's like a
yeah, exactly. It's a sump pump inside a garbage can, an old garbage can, which we poked holes in, and put a big hose, attached a big pipe to, and had it send the water out to a ditch, which was like 200 feet away. And we dug a whole bunch of little rigoles here to bring the water to that hole, and that's how we drained our field. It was ridiculous, it was absolutely absurd. We did share these photos on Facebook, and it was sort of part of our laughing at ourselves but making it work sort of experience that allowed people to sort of get to know us a little bit. Now, one of the questions that you had, Jeff, was what's the difference between organic and conventional, or maybe why did we decide to go organic? Well, the photo on the right just is not tempting to us. That's something that comes out of a horror story, but there's a reason for it, of course, why people farm that way, because we need food, and that produces an awful lot of food. But this was somewhere in our first or second year, the photo on the left, where Sarah's using a wheel hoe to prepare the soil to get rid of the weeds before we were planting. Now, obviously, we're not going to produce nearly as much food with the photo on the left as we are in the photo on the right. But we reduced the spacing. So you see that there's pretty wide spacing between the rows on the right-hand side to accommodate the tractor, essentially, the wheels of the tractor. We don't have a tractor. We don't have that kind of equipment. So we can space stuff a lot tighter, which means that we make a lot more revenue off the space that we grow in. So we have 1.5 acres, but it's the equivalent of about 6 acres of more conventional spacing. In organic, we do use pesticides. We have to. It's a production system that is meant to grow food. It's not natural like a forest that you would find in nature. It's a production system, and so we do get a lot of bugs. We're basically providing them a buffet, and they want to eat it. So we don't want them to eat it. We want people to eat it. But the pesticides are only natural. We're only allowed to use natural pesticides. They break down much quicker. And the studies show that, yeah, we use soaps in part, because some of the pesticides we use are soaps to coat the plants and to protect them from insect damage. We also use nets, but in conventional agriculture, obviously, they use synthetic pesticides, which don't break down nearly as quickly, and we do find residues on the food that we eat. The studies do show that. The system on the right has a high degree of mechanization. We have a low degree of mechanization, and we offset that extra expense and labor by selling our food direct. So we don't pay a middleman. We do all our marketing ourselves, and we make the full profit off of the food that we sell. We get the full value instead of giving
interject with another question here then, Ian. You are affiliated with an organization called the CAPE, and you do sell at farmers markets. Can you explain a little bit about the role of those organizations? Or
yeah, sure. It's actually right at the end. The CAPE. Okay, so the Family Farmers Network was managed by Équiterre for 20 years. They built up this network of small farms, and I'm really getting dripped on now, I'm afraid. So they set up that network and basically popularized it. So it was direct links between people from the city and farmers from the country. And so allowing small scale agriculture to work in a sense, giving us some of the capital that we need, to the money that we need to hire employees, get stuff in the ground, buy our seeds, all of that, because people pay a certain amount in advance, and then later on in the season, and we guarantee that they'll get their vegetables. Now, Équiterre ended up selling last year, for legal reasons, they actually had to, the network to La CAPE, which is a cooperative of farmers. So now we own collectively this tool that we have that was managed by Equiterre and has a huge marketing power behind it, really good visibility. They also do collective purchasing for us. So some of the stuff that we need the most of, that everybody needs, all of the small farms need, we get together and we buy it together, so that it costs us less and we can have access to some of the stuff that we wouldn't if we were just going to go to the store. Yeah, so that's one of the ways that, you know, small farmers still manage to get it done. One of the major differences is that we plant a polyculture. So we plant 40 different varieties of vegetables because we want the people that we're selling our vegetables to want everything. They want everything that they can get at the grocery store. Now, there's some things that we can't grow here because they're so tropical that our season's not long enough. But in regular conventional system, it's pretty much a monoculture. It's one type of plants that you will see, and that is just literally a buffet for all sorts of disease and insects, and it requires a lot more pesticides, not only synthetic pesticides, but a lot more of them. And yeah, I just wanted to mention really quick, soil is alive. One of the reasons that we do what we do is because we want to feed the soil, not the plants. We don't treat it like a sponge that we can inject nutrients into. This is the network here of microorganisms that exist in the plant. So the sun, through photosynthesis, feeds the plants carbon. And the plants are able to fix carbon, which is one of the building blocks of the atmosphere. Basically takes CO2 out of the atmosphere and injects it into the soil. And all of these microorganisms use that energy to convert it into something that the plant can use. So it's really a symbiosis. We don't need to go through that any more level than that. I just wanted to show you what we're focusing on. And we use cover crops to preserve that life in the soil. So a bare soil is dead soil. It's not being fed. It's not resting. It's dying because it's not being fed. So we use cover crops. In a conventional system, well, you still need to get rid of that cover crop before you plant, right? In a conventional system, they would use herbicides to burn off those crops. They would spray a chemical, mostly Roundup, to get rid of that so that we can plant in it. Well, we don't have access to that. It's obviously not organic. That's one of the pesticides that has the most, that's most well known for causing cancer rates. And so we use this sort of tarp here on the right, which is just a big sheet of thick plastic that we reuse year after year to do the same thing. So this here has been covered for 2-3 weeks, and you can tell that we can basically just plant right into that at that point. We don't need herbicide. That's something we can do at a small scale that we wouldn't be able to do at a larger scale organic, but it's part of our toolkit.
Ian, I'm just going to ask you again because I do think that the students might find this interesting, but you do have another tool for getting rid of some of your weeds. Did you want to tell the students about that?
From the Mad Max collection.
Oh yeah, okay. I will.
I'll take a photo of it.
Yeah, okay. I'll see. Just gotta move.
Oh, do you have a photo of it?
I do have a photo. Yeah. Okay. So we use something called a flame weeder, which is basically a big torch that that we run. That we just walk down the bed with this torch, and a friend of ours gave us a baby carrier because we had kids basically at the same time as we started the farm, and he thought we would carry our children in it, and we decided to carry a 50-pound propane tank in it instead so that we could burn our weeds, which sounds a bit ridiculous, but it's a really effective way to get rid of weeds. And it's small stage weeds. We'll do this right before we plant, and it gives us a jump on the weeds. So in a bed that we may have tarped previously, that is essentially free of weeds. Well, if you leave it for a week, the weeds are coming back, and so you still need to take care of them before you plant. Otherwise, they're going to get absolutely swamped. So I'm just trying to find that photo.
You don't have to find a photo if you can't, but I just thought it would be an interesting thing for them. I think it's hilarious.
Some of the large organic farms who are really they have engineers and things that are working with them, and they there's one called the Co-op Tonasal that's also nearby, and they go full sort of mad backs, and they actually have a flame weeder that you can drive,
Oh, wow.
and it looks exactly like what you would imagine it would look like. It is the most insane looking vehicle that you could imagine.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it looks absolutely dangerous, and I'm sure it probably is, but mostly
Yeah.
for the weeds.
Yeah, don't worry about the photo yet. We'll, you can forward
Right.
it to me another time if you want. And
Yeah, sorry, I'm having trouble with it's quite bright in here, so I'm actually having trouble seeing what the
oh yeah.
well, this is a small one that we have. I think it's actually a video, so I'll just keep that.
Video.
Yeah, so we do some marketing. Basically, this is me wearing the backpack and a small weed dragon that you can find. You can buy this at the corner store. So it's like
I don't think we can see. Are you sharing it right now?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I think you'd have to stop and then start sharing that again if you'd like us to see it.
I see. Okay.
Just one of those Zoom.
Yeah. Okay. This is just to give you a quick idea. So that's the backpack I'm wearing, and basically I'm torching the weeds. But we have a bigger one now. That's 5 torches that we just 5 torches on wheels, and we just walk it down the bed. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna share again the presentation. So yeah, there's a bunch of tools that we can use, and the government is actually really helpful as far as allowing us to buy those tools. They have some pretty generous programs as far as you know, to reduce the number of pesticides that are used. Generally speaking, it's not just organic farms that can that are eligible for that. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question here that I'd like to throw at you guys. So I'm going to sort of bring a couple of questions together from what the students have had. But Elodie and Elizabeth were both asking about the challenges, you know. Is it physically challenging? How challenging is it to balance your parenting? You know, Sarah also has jobs outside of the farm. With starting, you know, a small farm, and like Bianca too. So, you know, it's hard to start a new farm. So how
so one thing that we didn't quite realize is we knew that we would have to do everything ourselves, and you know, benefiting from that direct sales channel, which gives us the full profit, means that we have to get people to buy our stuff, and they're not just lining up to do that. It's not like you just put up a table and you're going to sell out. You need to work on that. You need to get people to trust you, to trust that you're going to be feeding them good food, basically. And that has taken us years to build up. Yeah, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we're going into our 7th year. And the big thing that we didn't quite realize, like, yeah, of course it's physically challenging, and you know, I think a lot of people are willing to rise to that challenge. There are a lot of new farms like ours that are starting up. It's actually a huge movement right now. For the first time in 15 years, there are more new farms in Quebec than farms that have decided to throw in the towel, which is a really major challenge, and it's almost all farms like ours. But you know, you hear hard work and you say, okay, well, yeah, sure, I can do it. I'm up to the challenge. But it was really the validation for that work and financial validation for that work that was a big surprise for us. The amount of work that you have to do to make a buck for $1. It was the most work that I've ever done, that either of us have ever done, for the amount that we were actually generating. So like, oh my God, really? Like, we're only going to make $100 off this thing we spent off this bed of vegetables. We've spent so many hours working on it, you know, or it's like $2-3 an hour to start with. And so that's like hard work. Yes, you'd be okay with that, but you assume that it's going to be remunerated to a certain value. You're maybe not going to make $30 an hour, but you're going to make something reasonable. No. At the beginning, definitely not at all. It's getting better now. We're a profitable farm, but we're still not bringing in much, you know. But it's contrasted by a pretty awesome quality of life that we get, and the real validation that we're doing something that is super concrete and helpful to society, and we wouldn't be doing it otherwise if we didn't believe in that firmly.
And so Laura was asking, is it in theory that you guys can feed 150 families, or do you guys actively provide food for 150 families on the land that you have?
Well, we've got an objective of 100 baskets this year. So last year we had 83. So that's 83 families that would come and get our baskets every year, and then every week. Sorry, yeah. And then we would we have 2 markets also, and so people come and they buy our vegetables at the market without having signed up for our baskets. So that's where we estimate about 150 families. So we're obviously not providing them with their meat, they're getting that elsewhere, but we're providing them with pretty much all other vegetables.
Okay, and speaking of meat, Kiara wanted to know a personal question, which, just because I know you guys, I know is a little relevant. So are you guys vegan or vegetarian? Kiara wants to know.
So that became complicated. I've been a vegan and I've been a vegetarian from most of my life. I stopped eating meat when I was about 14, 15 years old, which was a fun, controversial decision in my family because they're dairy farmers on one side and the other side of my family is milk transport. So it was a wonderful discussion at the family table when I first decided to become a vegetarian, and then became a vegan years after that. And then actually when we started working on the farm and actually, when we had kids, when I was pregnant, I had to start eating meat. It was very strange, but I've never experienced cravings before, and suddenly was forcing my poor husband to go to rotisseries.
So she could smell.
So I could sit and breathe in the smell of chicken, and eventually just gave in. But it's I've gone back to being mostly a vegetarian.
And we don't eat all that much meat. We don't eat it every day, at most once a day. And it's not necessarily that much of a conscious choice. I mean, Sarah still buys meat for me and the kids. There's no problem there, but we have an abundance of vegetables available. And so we ended up being creative with that. So it's, you often hear that people eat too much meat, and I don't think necessarily that we need to exclude meat. We know people who raise animals in a very responsible way, lots of space, outdoor pens and stuff like that. And we need more meat like that. Obviously it's more expensive, but if you're eating half as much of it, then you can more than afford it, and get away from the industrial monoculture.
Yeah. So speaking of meat, then I'm just going to take this in a bit of a different direction. Bianca wants to know if you guys would ever be interested in having animals, or she says a different type of farm, but I mean, just like, would you ever consider having animals on your farm? Or
we like the idea of having animals. It's just that we know that it's a huge amount of work. Like we think that in some ways we're still figuring out how to make a living off of selling vegetables, growing vegetables. So having animals would be another bag of beans. So we sort of held off on doing that, but yeah, the initial idea was to have a couple of animals at the same time, and in another lifetime we might be animal farmers, but it would have to be a very specific kind of farm, I think, for Sarah to get along with it.
That's great. Sorry, Ian, we have totally interrupted your presentation now.
Not at all. Not at all. I just wanted to have a little bit of structure so that I could, not just ramble on.
No, you're doing great. Thank you so much. I was wondering, now Dave has a question. He wants to ask it at the end, but I would really love it if we could see your babies and not Maëlle. Not because I don't want to see Maëlle, yeah. It's adorable, but I know what, yeah.
Yes.
We have Kieran.
We have Kieran. We also have another child who's Kieran. So yeah, okay, I am going to shut off the screen sharing. There we go. Okay, so we are inside our seedling greenhouse, and right in front of you is lettuce. So this is the kind of stuff that you'd find in those big plastic clamshells at the grocery store, the lettuce mix. But I just go for a walk. So basically these are we call them babies because they're kind of temperamental, and they need constant care, and we need to make sure they're always well watered. Today it's cold outside, there's no sun, but if the sun comes out, basically we'd have about 20 minutes to make sure that we get a door open in here, otherwise things would die because it just heats up that fast. So we really got to be on the ball, and it's kind of like this constant anxiety, at least in the first years when you're just wondering, you always feel like everything is right on the edge of dying. And each one of these plants, like just to give you an idea, one of these trays got 128 plants in it. That would plant a 50-foot bed, 50 feet of plants. So it's pretty small. You can fit a lot of plants in a small space here. And then we plant it out into a greenhouse in the field, or directly outside in the field. And then we have to take care of them from there on in. So that's, yeah. We've got a lot of diversity here. We've got, celery, we've got peppers, tomatoes. Right now we've got a lot. This is the really busy period for our seedling greenhouse. It empties out a little bit in the summer, but we do constantly replant stuff like lettuces because they're short cycle. They take about 45 days to maturity. So those we keep on planting throughout the year to make sure that we've got fresh greens right through till November.
And so Bianca wants to know, do you guys start everything with seedlings?
No, so we've got some plants that we start as seedlings a lot at this time of year because it's too cold to plant a lot of stuff outside. So we start them early. We get a bit of a jump on the season by starting them inside, and then we go and transplant them out. Let me see if I can just loosen up a plant here. This is a pepper, and so we take that plug, we call it, and we plant that in the soil. And we do that for all of the plants that are more tropical. Peppers and tomatoes are all tropical. Cucumbers, they're all tropical plants. They do not exist in North America. Well, maybe in Florida, but in Mexico. But we would not, our season is not long enough to plant these directly outside. So we always start them inside, 8 weeks ahead of our target plant date, which would be like mid-May. By that time, we figure it's warm enough outside that we're probably not going to kill them when we plant them outside. And we do have unheated greenhouses, passive solar greenhouses that provide a certain level of protection that we put those high-value plants in. But almost a great majority of the stuff that you see that you would typically buy and eat at the grocery store are actually tropical plants that are not made for Quebec, certainly. So we have to use various different technological means to get them to maturity in a short season.
That's great. And I'm just going to ask Dave what his question is.
Hi. First off, so wonderful to meet you and your family and to be introduced to your farm. So very appreciative of that. I have like 30 questions, so I'll try to pick my top one or two, but you have actually answered a couple of them with what you just said about greenhouses.
Dave, I'm just going to interrupt for a sec. So Dave, actually, when I was first talking to him about coming out, and like Sarah and I before, because we were talking about this ages ago, before the pandemic was sort of like we didn't know how long it was going to last. So Sarah was like, well, maybe you can come out, and Dave was like, can I come? Can I meet them? Can I see the farm? So I'm just letting you guys know he's had this sort of like enduring interest in what you're doing.
Yeah. And we have a project that's supported by Entente Canada Quebec, where 4 colleges are talking about sustainability and sustainability from an environmental perspective and what a campus green space could do to fit into that mindset, and how students maybe could contribute to that space, but how that space could also contribute back to the college community. So when I heard you talk about, bad land, I'm wondering, like, if each college campus has like about a third of a soccer field that they could dedicate towards something, if we really do something, like, could we start getting to a co-op mindset where we're providing the cafeteria with produce? How long a window could we do that? But you did answer some of that with the greenhouse question, with the greenhouse information. Champlain has a greenhouse. Should all colleges be trying to build a greenhouse to support some of this.
For sure.
And just so you know that these conversations that we're having, I think you're inspiring these conversations to get to the next level. And as we're talking and using words like permaculture, and so I guess my very first question to you is, how important is it for us to find the right piece of land on campus, or can we make, like you did, almost any piece of land work as long as we're dedicated? And then if we do that, how often do we have to be maintaining for, like, a yield that's significant to keep doing it?
You can't leave plants, unfortunately. They're pretty much babies as long as you have them in the ground, and you need to take care of them all the time. Basically, once you plant something, everything is perfect. You've got a weed-free bed, and whatever you plant it, you still have to fertilize it. You still water it all the time. You need irrigation, and then 2 weeks later, it's going to be full of weeds again. So you need to weed it. So you basically need constant maintenance. We don't really get to go on vacation in the summer. We take 3 days usually in the fall, and we do have employees now, so we can trust them usually to take care of things while we're gone to make sure that stuff doesn't die. But it's not a show up once every 2 weeks kind of thing, for sure. But you can take basically any piece of land, and with sufficient dedication, make it happen. It's just that you may have you may luck out. You may end up having good soil that is not too wet, reasonably fertile. I've seen people, even like urban farms, use those tarps, leave them on for a month, and basically your grass is gone. It's dead. It's asphyxiated, and you can put on amendments, compost, organic fertilizers and stuff.
The guy in BC who's using his front lawn.
Yeah, that's it. There's a guy called the urban farmer Curtis Stone, who he's kind of conceited, but he does he does make a living off of 1/3 of an acre in suburban lots in Kelowna, BC. And he just rents land from his neighbors who have little 10,000 square foot, 5,000 square foot plots, and he converts them. Comes with a whole bunch of challenges. You need to make sure the land isn't contaminated too. And if it has been a soccer field, or even campus maintenance, I don't know if you guys have a pesticide policy, but a lot of soccer fields are maintained by using pesticides. So you need a transition time. For organic certification, you need 3 years to convert from conventional to organic. That's the general idea. They say that there are no longer any traces of pesticides in the soil that you'd be transferring to the plant.
Beyond all that, it's definitely something that would be doable.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. So I don't mean to be pessimistic. It's absolutely doable. It's just different. I mean, we did it with our crappy piece of land, and which is really rich. Clay is really rich, but it's very difficult to work with.
Actually, at Champlain, we started, this was years ago, with another environmental geography class. I used to, because we're not on campus this year, we can't do it, but we usually plant seedlings. And I got the college to build a garden outside, and they actually hired a gardener to maintain everything. And so our class got to plant seeds and sort of like watch that grow over the summer. And then the food then became available to the college community, and it became donated to local shelters.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was something we did through this other, this class always touches on the theme of agriculture. So at different points, we've tried to be a little bit more proactive. But because we have a break in the summer, it's not really the ideal time.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, because there's so many different schools, even down to the elementary level at this point, and they really want to try to get these gardening programs working, because it's so important for people to understand exactly where their food's coming from and the amount of work that goes into the food, so that they understand price points and things like that when they do get to a grocery store. But yeah, that break in the summer, just they can't benefit from a lot of it, so they wind up putting all that work in the spring, and then never get to actually enjoy a carrot, and that's kind of unfair.
Yeah, it is kind of unfair. Yes.
Speaking of carrots, I didn't.
Yeah.
Speaking of carrots, I didn't finish answering. I forget who asked the question about do we start all our plants from seedlings? Carrots, you can't. Is an example of a plant that you can't start from seedling. You have to direct seed them. You cannot transplant a carrot; it'll die. Yeah, there are a lot of plants that we like: beets, carrots, spinach. A lot of greens we do start from seed direct in the field.
Great. Hold on. I did have a list of questions that I put together originally, and now we've just sort of gone
Sorry.
in any.
Well, while you're looking for that, the reason I have a towel here is because I'm
not?
getting dripped on because it's humid in here because we have a baby pool in our seedling greenhouse. It is right here. So we have an 8-foot pool that is kind of a spin-off benefit. So you asked me the questions earlier about the 3 pillars of sustainability, and I think the kind of farm that we're doing is a wonderful, super concrete example of social and environmental sustainability coming together, because we're literally feeding people with responsibly produced food, so you can't get much more sustainable than that. The economic side is lagging a little bit, I would say, because this type of production method is not what people are used to paying for. They're used to getting really cheap, abundant food and being able to waste it and whatever. So if people do, like Sarah was saying, if people knew what the work that goes into it, they would feel a lot less reticent to spend a little bit more money on their food, knowing that it's more nutritious too. But we get a lot of spin-off benefits from the fact that we're farmers, even though it's not, if we wanted to make money, we'd be doing something else. But we get to, this seedling greenhouse costs $9,000 with the heating system and everything. We've got a concrete floor and it's heated, but that allows us to go swimming with our kids in an 8-foot pool in March, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Especially during pandemic years when our annual trip to someplace warm with an ocean to get away for 2 weeks was,
yes.
really not accessible this year or last year.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move to our last question, and the last question has actually been reflected in questions that the students have been asking as well. You guys are great. Thank you for throwing out all those questions today. That's really, really great. And anybody who has any other questions, send them to me, and I can send them along to Sarah and Ian, and I'll see if I can rope them into answering something. But do you have any recommendations for people who'd like to follow a similar path? Like, you guys specified before that you didn't go to school specifically for farming, right? You guys, Sarah, Ian, and I actually know each other because we were in the same geography department. I've known Sarah since we were much younger than that. But yeah, so what would you suggest? Is this a path that you need to go to school for? Or what would you suggest as a path to follow to do what you do?
It's useful to go to school for it, yeah. And you can figure it out on your own, but you're going to make a lot more mistakes. You're going to spend a lot more money getting started, making those mistakes, and then correcting them later.
Also, if you do go to school, you become eligible for financial assistance and things like that through the Financière Agricole, that we were eligible for, one level of financial assistance. But people who are coming out of even just the vocational programs in, greenhouse maintenance and in market gardening now, the grants are actually quite nice.
Yeah. So
you can access.
The first tier, if you don't have any formal education in agriculture, and it has to be specific to agriculture, is $10,000. You get $10,000. The government will give you $10,000 to help you get your project started, which is, part of the cost of a greenhouse. So it doesn't go that far, but it's certainly a help. And then the next step up is $25,000, and the next step up is $50,000. So if you've got a 3-year university degree in agriculture, you can get $50,000 to start your project. In our case, we're still kind of glad that we went the route that we did without waiting any longer, because we ended up getting in on some markets that we wouldn't have had otherwise. There are a lot of people now starting up new farms and looking for that piece of the pie, the piece of the pie of people who are willing to actually buy organic food. And so there's more competition now than there was when we got in, and we're really lucky. We're really happy that we were able to get into the Huntington Farmers Market, which is not a very big market, but it's right next to us, and we're really well set up there, and we've got people who come back every year. So consider it. I mean, if you've got a really good opportunity right away to get into to a market that's advantageous for you, then it might be worth jumping at that opportunity and doing some more training type of education as you go along. But if you're still not quite sure, got a lot of questions, but you're really interested, I would say go the education route. Get the education in it and figure out what it is.
But also, if you're going to go the education route, take a summer and actually work on a farm.
Yeah.
Because just from experience with employees that we've had who've gone through the programs, it's not enough. It doesn't give you the actual benefit of knowing what it's like to actually spend a summer, doing that 8-9 hours a day. So I think that's also an incredibly important.
And the good programs have good stage programs where they'll actually send you off for a week or 2 weeks to work on a farm and get the beat and see what it's like, and see if it's something that you're up to physically, if it's something that you really feel good about, and that some farms that we've heard of, fortunately we don't get too many of these applications, but people saying they want to work 4 or 5 hours a day, they want to work part-time. It's like no. You're in or you're out. You're here is going to be 50 hours a week, and it doesn't matter how sore you are from the day before, you're going to get up the next day and you're going to do it all again. And it's because the plants don't wait. The weeds don't wait. If you wait an extra day to do them, then you won't be able to. You're going to lose the bed. Basically, they're going to get swamped. Anyway.
That's great. I'd like to say thank you very much to Ian and Sarah, and I'm going to stop the recording right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm stopping our conversation. One sec.